I was reading in the book of Jeremiah the other day, and I know I've read this passage. I've had to have just about every year, and I don't ever remember reading it, but I read this the other day. It's Jeremiah 33, verse 9, and it says, "And this city shall be to me a name of joy, a praise, and a glory before all the nations of the earth." So they're talking about Jerusalem. Um, who shall hear of all the good things that I do for them? They shall fear and tremble because of all the good and all the prosperity I provide for it. So I read that and I got like it was almost disturbing to me. It was disturbing to me where I read that last part about they shall fear and tremble because of all the good and all the prosperity I provide for it. Being God is could bless his people so much that it's fearful and causes trembling. And I just was convicted, like, why, how, and how often have I been blessed so much by God where I just look at the blessing in our church or in our smaller groups or whatever and think this is such amazing blessing. I'm fearful and trembling, and I think, and I started thinking, why is that I don't fear and tremble before the blessing of God? Or why is it that I don't, um, why isn't God maybe blessing us in a way that is causing us to fear and tremble? And so as I was thinking and praying about that, I was convicted. Ephesians 3:20, it says, now to him who is able to do abundantly more than we could ever ask or imagine, or ask or think, depending on the translation. And I think the reason we don't have that amount of blessing is because we just simply don't ask. And when we ask, when we pray and ask, we're thinking small things. We pray, um, we don't pray big enough. If we have an infinitely powerful God, I think we need to have a little bit more imagination with our prayers and a higher aim with our prayers. Um, and maybe that's because of a lack of faith, but I think that what we have been doing at West Valley with dividing up into house churches and embedding ourselves more into the community, that has a big view of God. But do we have that in that big view of God as we're actually going about this? And are we praying accordingly? And then in addition to that, I wonder, when we do, or if we do pray according to this big view of God, are we actually serious? Um, if God were to bless us, say with revival, would we really be able to handle that? Would we be able to handle the dying to ourselves? Because when somebody is saved and they're messed up, that takes us dying to ourselves to disciple them and to deal with their junk and to work through their junk with them. And it's so when we pray, are we serious? And if we're not serious, how serious is God going to take our prayers? Um, so I have been just greatly convicted, like, how how can I pray bigger for what God has called us to do? And am I really serious about that prayer? Am I willing to, this isn't just prosperity for God so that we can live some lifestyle of the rich and famous. I think this is prosperity for making disciples and changing a culture. There are so many issues in our culture that are really clear today, and it would take, I just think of the race issues we're dealing with in our culture. It's really messed up. And I do not have any hope in our culture fixing that. I don't have any hope in our government. I feel like the government's just going to make it worse. Sorry if that offends someone. Probably not, though. Um, but when I read the Bible has a solution, that Jesus is the solution to race. Are we really willing to pray that our groups become the solution, that our little churches become the solution to race problems or whatever it is? I mean, it's beyond what we can ask or imagine. Uh, we need to think larger in our prayers, and we need to take serious the dying to ourselves that those prayers require uh, to be answered. So that's our charge, my charge, I guess, my conviction. I'm convicted we need to pray bigger because we have an infinitely powerful God that hears us. And we need to take those prayers serious, our prayers serious, being willing to die to ourselves as the answer. If God answers those prayers, it will require us to die to ourselves to make disciples. And there's really no way around that. We don't get our prayers answered without dying to ourselves for the things we should be. If we're praying about the Great Commission requires dying to ourselves. Um, so we we need God to expand our mind so that we can pray bigger and more effectively and take serious the requirements of dying to ourselves.